Welcome to the BridgeNY 2018 Program and Application Training webinar. This is the same training that will be given in person on February 20th through 23rd. See the BridgeNY website to register for the in-person or webinar training on these dates. During today's training, we will be reviewing the 2018 BridgeNY program, including the program objectives, funding information, important dates, changes from 2016. We will talk about the eligible sponsors and eligible projects. The BridgeNY website will be discussed. There will be a walkthrough of the application, including application tips for sponsors. The rating criteria from the Notice of Funding Availability will be shown. The draft application pre-review process will be discussed. There's important information in the Notice of Funding Availability that will be brought to your attention. And the general requirements and resources available to sponsors will be shown. And then the availability of frequently asked questions will be talked about. So the BridgeNY program provides assistance for local governments to rehab and replace bridges and culverts. BridgeNY helps communities deliver safe, transformative, and innovative bridge, culvert rehabilitation and replacement projects that address poor structural conditions, mitigate weight restrictions, mitigate detours, reduce the risk of flooding, improve resiliency, and facilitate economic development. So the available funds in the 2018 BridgeNY program are seen on this slide. There is $200 million available for bridges. The state is broken down into 4 regions, so competition will be within these 4 areas for the dollar amount shown in the graph. And for culverts, there's $50 million available, and the competition with that will be statewide. So the minimum award amount for bridges is $250,000. And the maximum award will be $5 million. The award amount will be 95% of the authorized project costs, meaning that you have a local match of 5%. For culverts, the minimum award amount is $50,000, and the maximum award amount is $1 million. Award amounts will be 100% of the authorized project costs, meaning that there will be no local match. So any costs incurred beyond an authorized project award shall be the sole responsibility of the project sponsor, meaning they will be responsible for any cost overruns. And costs incurred prior to the project award, defined as an executed SLA or state-local agreement, will be ineligible for reimbursement. The important dates for BridgeNY 2018 are as follows. There's going to be a draft application pre-review process. The submission deadlines for this process are March 15th for culverts and March 29th for bridges. The final application submission deadlines are April 13th for culverts and April 27th for bridges. It is anticipated that the project award announcements will occur in late summer or early fall of 2018. Next, I will discuss the differences between the 2016 round and the current 2018 round of BridgeNY. There were no changes in the eligible applicants for the program. For the eligible projects in 2016, it needed to be a public roadway. In 2018, we are excluding structures on toll facilities. We are excluding pedestrian bridges. And there's an option to exclude projects with construction phase already on the STIP. And there's clarification that is added for mixed road or bridge ownership cases, for example, canal bridges. We've previously talked about the amount of funding available. This has changed from the 2016 round. For bridges, the funding available in 2016 was $180 million. That increased to $200 million. And for culverts, the funding available was $20 million. That has increased to $50 million. The funding type is the same. For bridges, it is federal funds, and for culverts, it is still state funds. The funding ranges have been discussed. So the maximum for bridges is $5 million, with flexibility added in the 2018 round, giving New York State DOT flexibility based on the quantity and quality of applications. There was no bridge minimum in the 2016 round. That has been changed to a minimum of $250,000. The culvert maximum remains the same at $1 million, and the culvert minimum has been reduced from $100,000 to $50,000. So a cost contingency and hydraulic resiliency has been added. This was not included in the 2016 round. For the 2018 round, in the application, there is an additional 9% added to the estimate to account for field change and mobilization. This is added right into the cost on the application. And the hydraulic analysis for culverts, a preliminary analysis or sizing the structure based on 50% larger than the existing span is a requirement to reduce risk on hydraulic opening. For the funding years, you can see they're given here. For the 2018 round, it's state fiscal year 18-19 and 19-20. The geographic funding distribution has not changed. The scoring factors have changed a little bit. For a bridge portion of the program, there is bonus points available for sponsors that include a PE certified letter stating that they have reviewed the application. There is a pre-review process available for bridges and culvert applications. There are bonus points for sponsors who participate in the pre-review. And then the delivery risk, infrastructure need, and economic competitiveness factors remain the same as last time. The scoring approach in 2016 was qualitative. We're changing that to be quantitative. The force account delivery method, we were silent on that in 2016. It is discussed in the Notice of Funding Availability for 2018. This is allowed for bridges, assuming that the sponsors must provide a public interest finding, and it is available for culverts. In 2018, we will be having centralized consultant support for culverts if the sponsors choose to participate. This is not available for bridges and was not available in the 2016 round. Pertaining to review teams, we are increasing the number of review teams. In 2016, there was 5 teams. We're anticipating 11 in 2018. We had 1 evaluator from the ESD last time, and this time we will be providing guidance to all reviewers. The evaluator scoring areas has not changed from last time. The locals will score projects outside of their own region. In 2016, we had 3 New York State DOT reviewers. This time we will have 11 New York State DOT reviewers. The reviewers last time had to review bridges and culverts. This time, each team will only have to review either bridges or culverts. As for the number of applications that can be submitted, there are no changes in bridges. Last time, you could submit 2 applications per year for a total of 4 applications, and you could be awarded 1 application per year for a total of 2 bridge awards. That remains unchanged. We have changed the number of applications for culverts It was 5 applications per year, and we have reduced that to 3 applications per year, meaning that this time you could submit 6 applications total. And the number of award amounts for culverts has remained unchanged. So you may receive 3 awards per year for a total of 6 culverts. As I mentioned, the application site bundling, this was not clear in 2016. If you want to apply for 2 projects that are very close to each other, you need to apply for each site separately. So 1 application per structure, even if they are very close to each other. Right-of-way was not specifically discussed in the 2016 round. Please read the NOFA carefully this time with respect to right-of-way. The sponsor needs to identify the right-of-way needs in the application. You need to certify that the sponsor is going to acquire the right-of-way, and they need to have proof of right-of-way ownership. Also, New York State DOT can void awards if the sponsor fails in 1 or 2 above. So the time available for the projects. In the 2016 round, the sponsor had 36 months to complete construction. That time is being reduced to 30 months. And the time allowed to get to construction is being increased. So in 2016, the sponsor had 18 months to get their project to construction. That is being increased to 24 months. Training was not provided in the 2016 round. For 2018, we will be providing in-person training for sponsors and webinars, and we will also have webinars for the evaluators. Eligible sponsors include local governments, counties, towns, cities, and villages, tribal governments, public benefit corporations. All entities must be authorized to receive and administer state and federal transportation funding. Eligible projects include bridges on public roadways eligible for federal aid, culvert projects through the state aid process, and bridge projects that incorporate sensors to monitor structural integrity. Bridges and/or culverts that are on a toll collection facility are excluded from eligibility from BridgeNY funds. Multi-use, which would be pedestrian or bicycle bridges, and railroad bridges are excluded from eligibility. However, road bridges that carry public roadways over a railroad track are included in the funding opportunity. And sponsors can progress project construction through the use of force account. For bridge projects, there must be a public interest finding. All of the program information is contained on the website. You can type in the website listed here, or you can Google BridgeNY, all one word, to find the website. It is suggested that sponsors monitor and frequently check the website for the most current information. I'm now going to give you a walkthrough of the application. So here you can see is a downloaded copy of the BridgeNY 2018 program application. This can be downloaded from our website. This application has 2 pages of instruction, as you can see here. So please read through the instructions carefully and make sure you understand what you're filling out. I'm going to jump right into the meat of the application. So the first part is the sponsor information. So here you need to input all the information that is asked for, including the project sponsor, the sponsor responsible point of contact information. As you can see here, this includes a name, address, and email address. If you have a second business address or contact address, you can include that as well. If you do not, you can click on this to remove that from the application. The second part of the application is which type of application you want to fill out, whether it is a bridge or a culvert application. Now, the way this fillable PDF form works is that based on which application you choose, there are certain things that become invisible or visible depending on what is appropriate. So if we start out with a bridge application, you can go and select what region you're in. Now, how do you know which application that you want to choose, whether it's a bridge or a culvert application? So this is determined based on the span length of the existing structure. So if your existing structure is 20 feet or greater, that requires a bridge application. And if it's less than 20 feet, then that requires a culvert application. If you have an existing culvert that has a 19-foot span length, and you know that when you replace it, it's going to be a bridge, that is still a culvert application. Now, as you can see here, if I change this to a culvert application, there's information that pops up. So this says, click here if the sponsor would like New York State DOT to design and then let this culvert in a bundled construction contract. If checked, then the sponsor is required to submit a draft application for the coordinated pre-review with New York State DOT. So this is the location to check if you would like New York State DOT to design and let your culvert for you. The second part of the application is the project estimate. Again, this is a fillable form, so you pop right down in here and you fill in what you believe to be your construction cost. I mentioned earlier that it automatically calculates a 5% field change payment and 4% mobilization cost. That is added right here. You can go ahead and add your cost for construction inspection, what you believe you're going to have to spend for right of way, and then how much money you plan on spending for design. The form fills this out for you. It adds up all the costs, and it comes with a total project cost, as you can see here. If for some reason you already have other funds secured, let's say you have already completed the design and you paid for the design, you can place that dollar amount here. And let's go ahead and switch this back to a bridge. So you can see that the total BridgeNY funds requested are the 95% of the project cost minus the funds already secured. So you're requesting about 1.6 million, and it tells you what your local match is going to be, the 5%. Let's say that you do not have any money. You should fill in with zeros and not just leave blank. So you can see that it calculates your total requested dollar amount, the 95%, and your total local match. Now, if you noticed before, there's a table for bridge projects. If you have a culvert project selected, there was a separate table that calculates the 100% funds requested and then the 0% local match for you. Now, moving down, there is a table with suggested values for design, right-of-way, and construction inspection cost based on a percentage of the total construction cost. These values are for your reference only. They are suggested values, and the sponsor is responsible for all cost input in the application. One way you can use this table, as you can see, we are saying that we anticipate construction inspection to be between 10 and 12% of the construction cost. Now, the construction cost is what you put in for construction and the field change and mobilization. So it's these two numbers summed together times 10% and 12% gives you a low end value and a high end value. So for this specific project that I input numbers, it looks like I might be short on money for construction inspection. So that's something that you should look into, and if that is true, you should justify why you're outside those ranges. Now the same goes for design costs. We anticipate design costs to be between 20 and 25% of the construction costs. And you can see here that the dollar amount input is well above the 25%. So again, there might be a reason for this, but if you are outside of these ranges, you should provide justification for that. The next part of the application is the existing structure information. Now currently this application is showing the requested information for a bridge project. So the first thing you can see is that you need to fill out the bin number. If you have a project identification number, go ahead and fill it in. If you don't have one, that's okay. There's a check box here. If the sponsor owns the structure, then you need to check this box. If you do not own it, then you need to leave it blank. The next part of the application is to download the existing bridge information worksheet. This is an Excel file, and you can download it from our website. This is what the worksheet looks like here. So you download this Excel file, you put in the bin number of the bridge in question, and what this does is this shows you the information that we are going to be using as part of the review for this project. So this makes sure that the sponsor has the same information that New York State DOT is using. You can see here that there's a local bridge priority index that is calculated for each bridge, and that number can show how good a project might be for this bridge. So the higher the number, the worse condition the bridge is going to be in, and the more likely it is in need of a project. Where this bridge here has a very low number, so this bridge is probably not in very much need of a project. So again, please download that file from our website, and there's a portion in the application later on where you can attach files. So once you attach that file, you can come and hit this check mark so that we know you have attached that file to your application. Now that file can be the Excel file itself, or it can be a PDF of the Excel file. Either one is fine. So since we have all of the bridge inventory in our database, we do not need to gather any more information from you. That is not the case for the culverts. We do not have a database that has all the culvert inventory information. So if I go back and I switch this now to a culvert application, you can see that where I just filled in the bridge information, that is now invisible. And now you're asked to fill in information pertaining to this specific culvert. The first thing you need to fill out is the culvert identification number or identifier. If each sponsor already has their culverts inventoried and they have a unique naming system, they can use that. If they do not have a unique naming system, they can go ahead and just use culvert 1, 2, 3, 4, however many they want to submit. And all this is a way to identify culvert applications from the same sponsor. So you can go ahead and input culvert 1. Again, if you have a PIN number, go ahead and put that in. Check the box if the culvert is owned by the sponsor. Fill out the county where the project is located. And then we have the information that we already have for the bridges. This is the information we're requesting for the culverts. Feature carried over feature crossed, year built, width of opening, length of barrel, latitude and longitude of the project. We need this information to map the location of all the projects, the traffic, percentage of trucks, the detour length, the load posting, whether it's posted or not, and then the material type that the culvert is made out of. There is a website listed here, so you can track down what that latitude and longitude is for that particular bridge. We will now continue and move on to the next part of the application, which is project needs. As you can see here, we want to know why this project is needed. So please check all that apply, whether it's structural condition, inadequate structural capacity or load rating, hydraulic inadequacies, inadequate vertical clearance, or other. We also would like to know what the project scope is, so you can choose from one of the following. And then there's an empty box over here on the right where you can provide us with more information that you feel we might need at this point. And specifically, if you choose other and rehabilitation, we would like to know specifically what the scope of work is. Now, for culvert projects, the sponsors are directed to take one of the two following options to mitigate the risk for culvert projects. So we all know that just because a culvert has an existing size, it may be inadequate hydraulically, and usually these culverts get bigger when we design new ones. So in order to mitigate this risk, we are asking the sponsor to either provide a preliminary hydraulic analysis performed and stamped by a New York State professional engineer, or they can base the culvert size and project scope on a minimum culvert span length equal to 1.5 times the existing waterway opening. So sponsors need to take one of these two actions. Otherwise, without justification, they can be significantly downgraded. The next part of the application is the sponsor's opportunity to tell us about their project. So the first part is the project needs. So please describe the project and infrastructure need, and you are limited to the space that you can see here. The second is the project scope. So please tell us about the project scope. And then the last box is describe the project's special features. So you can let us know anything about the project that you feel is relevant. The next part of the application is the project delivery. So we'd like you to indicate the current project status. So you can pick from this pull-down menu. And we just want to know at what stage of the process you are in. We also would like to know the estimated month and year of letting and the project priority. So the project priority has to do with your own applications. So if you plan on submitting 2 bridge applications, one should have a priority of 1 and the other one should have a priority of 2, depending on which one you would prefer to be awarded. If you also have 3 culvert projects that you're applying for, those 3 applications should have a priority of 1, 2, and 3. The next part of the application is we would like for you to tell us the number of anticipated right-of-way acquisitions. And at this point, I'd just like to point out that you should read the notice of funding availability very carefully with respect to right-of-way acquisitions. We are requiring the sponsors to identify the property rights to be acquired and proof of right-of-way ownership. Ownership can be shown through surveys and clearance certificates, highway boundary line on a stamped plan, or record plans, and tax maps are not sufficient documentation. So you can provide us with that information here, and you can attach any files later on in the application. We also would like to know if any structure, building, site, or object that may be listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. And then we're looking for what is the status of your environmental reviews, whether it's SEEKR or NEPA, whichever one applies. And then project deliverabilities. Where do you stand with respect to design report, ADPs, and PS&E and bid documents? Have you not started at all? Have they been initiated, completed, or not applicable? We would also like to know what is your anticipated completion date for these deliverables. And again, there's a blank box here for any project delivery information that you feel like you need to share with us. The next part of the application is the attachments. This is where you can attach any additional files that you would like to provide for us. Also note that any information that was required in the application is preceded with asterisks. So we are looking for you to provide a detailed project estimate, which you can click on here, and it brings up an Add Files window. So you can find that estimate, click on it, and it will attach to your application. Now, what you're seeing here is for a culvert application. So you can see there's something missing or something invisible here. So if I go back up, and I'm going to switch this back to a bridge application. And you can see that that now has the existing bridge information worksheet. So you can go ahead, click on that, attach your existing bridge information worksheet, and it attaches to the PDF. Now, if you click this button again, all that's going to happen is that same window is going to pop up. So you can continue attaching files to this PDF just by clicking any of these on and off. It does not matter which ones or where you click as to which file gets attached. So you can see that we are requiring a detailed project estimate, project schedule, and for bridges, the existing bridge information worksheet. Everything else that you want to attach is up to you as to how you want to better describe your project. The next part of the application is certification and getting ready to submit. There are two checkboxes here for bridges. The first one being check this box if you had submitted a draft application for pre-review as described in the instructions on page 2 and have attached the comment sheet. So if you participated in the pre-review, you should check this box and make sure to attach the comment form that we provide to you at the end of the pre-review period, and make sure you check this box right here. And that's going to be for bridges and for culverts. The next box is for bridges only, and if you went ahead and got a PE certification letter for your bridge project, you can go ahead and check this box. Now, if I go back to the beginning of the application, I change this to a culvert application. So now you can see that the PE box is now invisible, and now there's a box for culverts about whether you have attached a preliminary hydraulic analysis or base the cost and scope on a minimum culvert span length of 1.5 times the existing waterway. So if you've done that, go ahead and click that box too. Lastly, you need to have a digital signature to sign the application. If you go ahead, you can click on it, and if you already have a digital signature set up, it will bring that up. You can put in your password and it will sign it digitally for you. If you do not have a digital signature already set up, when you click on that, it will walk you through the steps in order to set that up. The next thing that I'd like to point out is the file naming convention. This is for a culvert application. So before you submit for the draft application pre-review or the final review, you need to rename your application based on the nomenclature given here. So the first part is going to be either a C or a B for bridge or culvert. It's going to be the region number. It's going to be the sponsor name. And then it's going to be either the bin number or the culvert identifier that you put in the application. So whatever you place in the application, it's going to grab that and create a PDF file name for you. So please use this file name that is given in the application. So once you have signed and named your file, you can print the file for your records, and then you can click on this button here, and it will bring up an email that is already addressed to BridgeNY@dot.ny.gov, and it will have your PDF file attached to it, so you can go ahead and submit it. So another thing I'd like to point out about the application submission is that we will be using the information from the electronic PDF to extract data. So please do not submit a scanned copy of the file. This goes for the draft submission at pre-review and the final submission. So we want to make sure that everybody is using the proper naming convention, as you see here for a bridge. And we want to make sure that we get a copy of the full PDF. We do not want a scanned version of the PDF. Once you have completed your application, as mentioned previously, you can submit the final application to BridgeNY@dot.ny.gov. A confirmation email will be sent stating receipt of the application within 1 working day. This is not an automatic reply, so don't get nervous if you don't get an email right away. So some application tips to think about when you're going through the application. Become familiar with application instruction and the notice of funding availability. There's a lot of information that is given, and many of the questions can be answered within that information. Gather the information you need that's necessary to complete the application. If you have to go out in the field, if you have to take pictures, do that as soon as possible. Check for the necessary software. Adobe Acrobat Standard, Pro, or DC is required to fill out the application. Download the form to your computer. Don't try to fill it out through a web page. You can use the tab button to go through the application. Use a word processing program for lengthy entries and then cut and paste in the application. One bridge or one culvert is project per application, so you cannot combine multiple structures for one application. One structure per one application. The documentation should be attached to the PDF. So like I said, we want to have one PDF file with all the documentation attached to it. The application deadlines listed include application and all supporting documentation. Please contact BridgeNY@dot.ny.gov with any questions you may have. Please check our website frequently for updated information, and also check the frequently asked questions, which will be updated weekly. And then save and print your application for your records. So now I want to talk about the rating criteria for the bridges. With the bridges, this is a 2-step process. As I talked about in the existing bridge information worksheet, there is a local bridge priority index. Here you can see on this table of how that is calculated and what that is based on. So initially, all the projects are ranked by the LBPI. The second step is a review by New York State Structures experts and representatives from town and or county highway superintendents associations. The first thing they will be looking for is whether the project completed the draft application pre-review. This is a yes or no question. You either get bonus points or no points. And for the bridges, they're looking to see if there is a certification letter that a PE did a quality assurance review of the application. So again, this is a yes or no. In order to receive the bonus points, that letter needs to be attached to the application. The review team is also looking at the delivery risk. This information comes right out of the Notice of Funding Availability. So they are going to rate the information in the application and give your rating is based on this information here. They are also going to look at infrastructure need and economic competitiveness. Once the individual teams have made their own scores for each project, there will be a consensus review meeting to develop a single rating for each project. And this also is given in the NOFA. So that was the process for bridges. The process for culverts is similar but slightly different. This is only a one-step process. As I stated before, we do not have the data for the culverts to calculate a local bridge priority index. So that step is skipped for the culverts. So again, there's a review by New York State DOT structures experts and representatives from the town and or county highway superintendents. They review applications independently. The first thing they do is see whether the project had a draft application pre-review. And this is a yes or no score. In order to get the bonus points, they need to attach the comment sheet to their final application. And then this is exactly the same as for the bridges. The independent review by each team member will include delivery risk, infrastructure need, and economic competitiveness. Once the individual teams have finished with their ratings, there will be a consensus review to develop a single rating for each project. So what is the draft application pre-review process? This is an opportunity for New York State DOT to review sponsors' draft applications prior to the final submission deadline. This is a formal process. Draft applications need to be submitted to BridgeNY at dot.ny.gov prior to the pre-review deadline. Written comments will be provided back to sponsors. So just to clarify when a pre-review is required and is not required. So the draft application pre-review submittal is required for culvert submissions where sponsors would like New York State DOT to administer the project. The pre-review is also required for bridge or culvert submissions that are not owned by the sponsor. So the draft application pre-review submittal is not required for bridge or sponsor-administered culvert projects. So if a sponsor is doing their own bridge or culvert project, or any bridge project, then a pre-review is not required. We do strongly encourage that sponsors participate in the draft application pre-review process, as bonus points will be available, and this will help you make a better application. So here are the deadlines for the pre-review process. So draft applications are due March 15th for culverts and March 29th for bridges. New York State DOT will take 15 days to review the application and provide comments back to the sponsors. So you will be receiving comments back on or before March 30th for culverts and April 13th for bridges. The draft applications do not need to have a digital signature, but the draft applications should be as complete as possible to receive the best comments possible. As with the final applications, we ask that you use the naming convention given in the application for the PDF, which is shown here. And as with the final applications, we will be extracting data from the PDF, the fillable form. So please submit the electronic PDF fillable form and do not scan the application. So draft applications are to be submitted to the BridgeNY email address as shown here, and we will send confirmation emails stating receipt of the application, and this will be within 1 working day. It is not an automatic reply. So now I'm going to go over the comment form. This is the form that you will receive back after you had submitted through the pre-review process. The first part of the form is says who the sponsor is and who the responsible point of contact information. So the person filling out this form is going to fill this information out exactly as what was submitted. The same thing with the estimate. This will be filled out to reflect what was submitted at the pre-review stage. And this is so that the people doing the final reviews will be able to see what changes were made from the pre-review to the final submission. Now, we will be giving comments regarding the scope of the project. So the first thing to be filled out by the pre-reviewer is the project scope described in the application appropriate? So that's yes, no, maybe they have to choose from. And then the scope review, they have to pick one of the 4 following statements, stating that the adequate information was provided to confirm that the scope stated in the application is reasonable. Scope seems reasonable. More information would better justify the scope. Scope may need to be adjusted to address existing conditions, or not enough information was provided to confirm scope stated in the application. Now, depending on which of these 4 statements is chosen, there's a spot below there where the commenter can fill out and give more information of what specifically may have been missing. Similar with the estimate. Does the cost estimate include the appropriate phases of design and construction? Yes, no, or maybe. And enough adequate information was provided to confirm estimate. Estimate seems reasonable. Estimate may need to be adjusted, or not enough information was provided. And again, there's a blank space where the pre-reviewer can give specific project comments to help you better your application with regards to the estimate. The next one is delivery risk. Was enough information provided to assess the delivery risk? Yes, no, maybe. Adequate information was provided. More information would help clarify the risks, or not enough information was provided to determine the risks. And then again, a specific spot is given where reviewers can provide project-specific comments. And then there's one big empty spot where reviewers can provide any comments to let you know what type of information that may have been missing or vague in the application, and providing this information in your submitted application will provide reviewers with a better understanding of the project. So that's what the comment form looks like that you're going to get back. Now the question is, how do you use these comments to make your application better for the final submittal? So there's really one of 2 things you need to do. If the comment is accurate, you need to adjust your application to address the inaccuracy. So for example, if the comment was cost for construction inspection was not included in the application, when you look back at your application, and maybe construction inspection was not considered. So construction inspection costs can be added to the application, and that's how you can make that a better application. If the comment was given was inaccurate, or it shows that the reviewer did not understand the intent, you need to add comments or explanations to your application so that the final reviewer will not make that same misunderstanding. So the same comment, costs for CI were not included in the application. Example adjustment to the application would be county has PE on staff and will be self-performing CI for this project. So that shows the final reviewer that no, you did not include CI cost, but you intend to pay for that on your own. So you are aware that there are CI costs and you have addressed that. So at this point, I would like to go over some important information that is included in the Notice of Funding Availability. And again, please read the NOFA carefully. So BridgeNY is intended to fund projects that would not otherwise be completed. New York State DOT shall reserve the right to defer consideration of projects with a construction phase already on the tip or step. BridgeNY is intended to fund locally owned projects. There are cases where local municipality has an interest in a structure with joint ownership or ownership by others. These structures will be considered. Any structure that is not owned by the sponsor will be required to submit a draft application for the coordinated peer review to be considered. So project scoring will be significantly impacted if the following items are excluded from the application. Project construction and total cost, including design and construction inspection. Clearly defined scope of work. If it's not a complete replacement, define the major components being replaced or repaired. Estimated month, year, and year of letting. An owner-defined responsible point of contact. And for culverts, adequate documentation of conditions through photos and inspection reports to provide evaluators with a clear understanding that appropriate scope is being proposed. About consultant selection. So federal and state regulations require a qualifications-based selection process for procuring engineering services. A consultant is only eligible to perform the phases of work named in the solicitation. So recommended language for hiring consultants would be BridgeNY project application development with the option for design and construction inspection if the application is successful. Right away, we talked about this a little bit during the application. If property rights need to be acquired for the proposed project, the sponsor must identify the property right to be acquired in the application. The sponsor is responsible for them and must certify that it will undertake the acquisition of these property rights. Please read the NOFA carefully with respect to right of way. So all projects advanced through this process must conform to the New York State DOT bridge design specifications and standards and have a service life appropriate for the level of work being performed. That would be 75 years for bridge replacements, 50 years for culvert replacements, 30 years for major bridge rehabs, and 10 years for culvert relinings. The top bullet in the slide is a screenshot from the NOFA that says how many applications are allowed to be submitted. Below this is the interpretation. So for this funding solicitation, BridgeNY 2018, which is 2 years of funding, means that sponsors can submit at most 4 bridge projects and 6 culvert projects. So with the deadlines that we've talked about today, sponsors are allowed to submit 4 bridge applications and 6 culvert applications. They can only receive at most 2 bridge awards or 6 culvert awards. And as stated previously, the applications for bridges and culverts must be submitted individually and will be scored individually. So 1 application per structure. The general federal requirements for bridges are as follows. This is a reimbursement program. The procedures for locally administered federal aid projects manual is required. Civil rights compliance includes American with Disabilities Act and Disadvantaged Business Enterprises, that's ADA and DBE. The environmental documentation required is the NEPA and seeker process, and the use of New York State DOT standard specifications are required. The general state requirements for the culverts are as follows. This is also a reimbursement program. The procedures for local administrative federal aid projects manual is required for the state aid process. The civil rights compliance includes the American with Disabilities Act, ADA, as well as the Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Program, MWBE. The environmental documentation that is required is seeker, and the use of New York State DOT standard specifications are required. As I said, this is a reimbursement program, so the process is as followed. The sponsor receives authorization to proceed, work is performed, and then the sponsor pays the contractor or consultant for completed work. Sponsor submits payment documentation to New York State DOT, and then New York State DOT reimburses sponsor for eligible costs. Resources to be used for federal aid guidance are on New York State DOT's website, as you can see here. The regional local project liaisons for New York State DOT are also available resources. Resources for state aid guidance. Project sponsors may use a simplified project documentation as appropriate, including the IPP FDR format found in the New York State DOT Project Development Manual. And project sponsors must follow New York State DOT design standards and design specifications. Resources are the BridgeNY website, along with the local programs website. And resources also include regional local project liaisons. That completes our BridgeNY 2018 program training. Please see our website for frequently asked questions. These are updated weekly, and please check back to our website frequently for any updates on the program. Thank you and goodbye.